Shin Megami Tensei Persona 3 was a very strange yet very beloved game. Despite it being the third entry in the series, it is often held as the first in what many fans would consider to be modern Persona, as it was the first game to truly define what the series would be going forward. The previous entries contained two fairly different gameplay styles, with Megami Ibonroku Persona, or Revelations Persona as it's titled in the West, being a first-person dungeon crawler in a very similar fashion to Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2, and the Persona 2 Duology being an isometric third-person JRPG. The series was still finding its bearings and trying to set itself apart from the series that it derives from, and with Persona 3 being the series' big transition into 3D, there was no better time to redefine what it meant to be a Persona game than now. Persona 3 is widely considered to be the darkest and most depressing game in its respective series, in stark contrast to its successor, Persona 4. Continuing the series' trend of delving into deep psychological themes, it thrusts you into an immersive world where you can discover multiple sides to one psyche through the means of forming and cultivating your own relationships with the game's wide array of characters, whom of which are all dealing with their own set of struggles in life. This feature was called the Social Link system, and is what later became referred to as Confidants in Persona 5. This entry in the series would also mark the first appearance of the later, formulaic, trope of being a lonesome transfer student, which serves as a means to help you become better acquainted to the social links, as they are just as much strangers to the player as they are the character. As previously stated, this game is dark, and it wants you to know that from the very beginning, seeing as the opening explicitly states Memento Mori, a phrase that is Latin for remember that you will die. And in the very first cutscene after the opening, we are shown a girl who we do not know attempting to do what we can only assume at the time is suicide, since she is very clearly scared and is hesitating to shoot herself with the gun that we see in her hands. At the end of this cutscene, we meet the game's protagonist, whom of which I will be referring to as Makoto Yuki, as he's canonically called in the movie adaptations and in the Dancing in Moonlight spin-off title. As he approaches the dorm where he will be staying, he steps through a pool of blood as he unknowingly enters a mysterious dark hour. He meets the members of the Specialized Extracurricular Execution Squad, or SEES for short, and he awakens to his persona Orpheus, and during this awakening, something very peculiar happens, where within another persona violently rips its way out of Orpheus. This persona is Thanatos, and this scene is very important as it serves as a metaphor for the course that Makoto's life is going to take. While Makoto is a wild card, meaning that he possesses the unique ability to summon multiple personas, the first one that is summoned is unique to him, and is a reflection of his very soul and identity. In Greek mythology, Orpheus failed his quest. He returned from his journey alive only to be killed later, very appropriate given the fate of Makoto. And as I mentioned previously, Thanatos bursts out of Orpheus. Thanatos, being the Greek personification of death, is significant as it not only symbolizes what happens during Orpheus' character arc in the mythos, but also what happens in Makoto's. Throughout this game, there is an ever-present illness that befalls the citizens of Tatsumi Port Island called apathy syndrome, a mysterious condition that reduces its victims to a vegetative state, and the number of cases grows exponentially after every full moon leading up to the end. Those who are completely overtaken by apathy syndrome are referred to as the Lost, the earliest manifestations of the Fall, which is an event that I will expand upon a little later. Our protagonist begins having visions and dreams of a young boy named Pharos. This boy resides in Makoto's psyche, and only ever appears during the dark hour. On multiple times, he keeps mentioning the Fall. This boy is very significant as he is directly related to the reason for Thanatos' manifestation as Makoto's alternate persona. Long before the events in this game take place, there was an incident that occurred when the Kirijo group, composed of Mitsuru's father and company, conducted an experiment that utilized shadows. This experiment was interrupted by death itself being forcefully stripped of its components and escaping. This is a flashback that we are shown later in the game. It is the very event where our protagonist's parents died, and the Shadow Death was battled by Aegis, an autonomous weapon designed by the Kirijo group, to hunt and eliminate shadows. With no other options, Aegis had no choice but to seal death away in the mind of the young boy who witnessed these traumatic events. Upon the defeat of the 12 greater shadows, of which you fight at the end of each of the game's major events, Death appears once again, this time manifesting as the charming Ryoji Mochizuki, someone that all members of SEES can see. And he's very flirtatious, kind, and an all-around pleasant person to be around. He very quickly becomes close friends with our protagonist, though Aegis is cautious of him and consistently warns Makoto to stay on guard near him, as she is capable of sensing his true identity. Ryoji also occasionally mentions this thing called the Fall. The Fall is none other than the arrival of Nyx, which in Greek mythology is the goddess of the night and mother of Thanatos. In Persona 3, Nyx is to bring eternal night through the means of the Fall. Nyx cannot be killed. only sealed away. Previously, Nyx was divided into multiple pieces and sealed away in the 12 shadows that we faced throughout the game, unknowingly freeing Nyx in the process. The only person who can stop this is our protagonist, Makoto Yuki, as he is gifted with the power of the Universe Arcana, making him to this day the most powerful character in all of Persona. This Arcana gives Makoto seemingly infinite power, which is seen through the means of him literally flying and sealing away the unkillable Nyx. However, this great feat does not come without cost. The final days of this game take place after this event and are slow and somber. The C's group forgets the events that transpired throughout the game, with the only thing they can remember being the fact that they all promised to meet up on the school rooftop on the day of graduation. As that day draws nearer, the player begins to be able to do less and less during the day as Makoto becomes sleepier and sleepier, with his body feeling extremely heavy and lethargic. The day of graduation comes. The only members who hold all of their memories at this time are Aigis and Makoto. Aigis is well aware of what is happening as she gives Makoto her peaceful parting words. They're the only two who meet up at the roof. That is, until the rest of them remember, and suddenly rush up as fast as they can, abandoning their graduation ceremony. But by the time they rush up, it's far too late, and the player receives one last message saying that their eyes are getting heavy. And you yourself has to press the button to end your own life. Though, this is far from the end of the story. In Persona 3 FES, there is an additional campaign called The Answer, that takes place after the end of Persona 3's main story, where the player takes control of Aigis, who is now gifted with the Fool Arcana, and her previous persona Athena transforms into Orpheus, as the journey is not yet over. The Answer begins on a very somber note, as all of the party members you had throughout the main game are mourning the anniversary of Makoto's death, just in the days prior to them having to vacate the dorm completely. During this time, a mysterious event transpires where they get stuck in some kind of Groundhog Day loop, and a strange path opens up beneath the dorm where another android named Metis emerges, claiming to be Aigis' sister. This path leads to a place called the Abyss of Time, which contains several doors, and at the top of each door, the characters witness flashbacks pertaining to how they obtained their personas initially. And atop the 7th and final door, C's fight a shadow of Makoto Yuki. After defeating it, each of them obtain a key that must be combined to end the time loop and leave the dorm once and for all, while their other option is to return to the moments before Nyx battles Makoto and attempt to prevent the events from playing out, though Metis proposes an alternative, and says that they can open a third door, which leads to the moment that Makoto sealed Nyx from the world. This seal is then revealed to be a stone Makoto crucified onto the very door that locks Nyx away. Though this seal was only meant to keep humanity from calling out to Nyx, as Nyx draws its power from humanity. But given the presence of C's, Nyx is able to generate a monster out of the malice of the human race called Erebus, which breaks through the seal, causing the time loop. They fight it and defeat it, but it's stated that Erebus will return again, as humans will never stop wishing for death. They also learn Metis' true identity from Igor in the Velvet Room, as Metis is the embodiment of Aigis' distraught over the death of Makoto, where Aigis desired to revert to being simply a machine and be without the broken heart that wounds her so deeply. Though Aigis eventually ends up making the choice to continue living as a human and moves on. Though, this still is not the end of this story, as throughout Persona 3, Elizabeth, the Velvet Room attendant, who grew very attached to Makoto, yearns for a way to bring him back. And years after the events of Persona 3, we see Elizabeth go on this journey in Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, where she battles Erebus time and time again on the moon as it keeps reappearing, using Thanatos as her choice persona, and that is the very last we've heard of this plotline. If ATLUS had just left it at The Answer and called it a day, we'd feel somewhat satisfied with the way the story played out. But because they called forth such a strong plot point in Ultimax and left it at cliffhanger, we're left to think that Elizabeth never succeeds in her journey and will battle Erebus until the end of time. We can only hope that ATLUS will revisit this in the future, and the likelihood of that is starting to become somewhat higher, as Persona 3 is finally garnering more attention from ATLUS, given the unexpected release of Dancing in Moonlight, a special Makoto challenge boss fight in Persona 5 Royal, and then throwing the idea of a Persona 3 remake into the air. I, for one, would love to see the conclusion to Makoto's story, and I would love to see him make a return, perhaps in a Persona 5 Arena title or something similar. I think that it would be a major resolution, and it will please a lot of fans, as this is a question we've had in the back of our minds for quite a long time. Anyways, this has been Logie from Trifecta TV, and I'll see you all in the next one.